Hey, St. Stephen Church family. Here are your church announcements. Get ready as Rev presents a special Black History Month sermon series, The Young and the Restless, in collaboration with Actors Theater of Louisville. We're kicking off the first week of sermons talking about Birmingham and the Children's Campaign. So we encourage everyone to attend and bring your children. Our ministry mall is now in full effect. Here's your opportunity to get involved at your church and choose which ministry specifically suits you. It's time to be counted in the number. St. Stephen Church will be conducting its 2020 census. Stop by the census table and complete your information. January 25th through the 26th and 28th through the 29th. Church, get ready because it is going down. It's the Legacy Choir in concert under the direction of Minister Kevin James. Sunday, February 16th at 6 p.m. on the Louisville campus. This concert will be honoring gospel music trailblazer, Miss Wilma Claiborne. Ladies, lift your voice. Women's Day 2020 is coming in March, and this year's theme is Flawless by Faith, walking into the decade of destiny. Ladies, the Women's Ministry wants you to become involved. Women's Fellowship is held every second Saturday at 1 p.m. Leadership meetings are every third Saturday at 1 p.m. We're looking for some committed women to help with fundraising, strategic planning, and the birthday club. If you're interested in signing up, email sis@ssclive.org. Hey, don't forget to check us out on Facebook. Give us a like to stay in the know of what's going on here at the Stephen. Also follow us on Twitter, and don't forget to download our app in the App Store. Now let's continue with worship. Be blessed.
What's really good,
What's
everybody?
up, guys?
Welcome to Millennial Monday. It's me, Corey, and Ryan.
I'm back.
So we're extremely excited about what we got going on today. First off, before we even get started, we definitely want to start off with prayer and then hit you up with our top 3 things. But again, glad to have Ryan back in the house.
Yeah,
hey,
I'm back.
You know what I'm saying?
I miss y'all.
Hey, this is our running buddy. So, I mean, it wasn't the same. The energy wasn't even the same. So, super excited about that. So, let's start off with prayer, and then we'll dive into our top 3 and then into our lessons. So, God, we thank you for today. And God, I mean, it's just a series of events that have occurred that has really made it extremely important for us to take advantage of the day and not take the day for granted. So God, for that, we just say thank you for you being you. Ask God that you would just put your loving arms tightly around not only just the family of the Bryants, but also, Father, anybody who has lost a loved one or currently going through this grieving process. God, we just thank you again for breath and life and just the ability to be able to say thank you, God. We thank you right now as you bless us as we touch on this topic, as we're dealing with loss. It's in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
So, yeah, I mean, seriously, I don't even know how we can just continue to move forward without having a conversation about, everything that has happened over the past just 24 hours. So the top 3 things, of course, is definitely going to be we have the father-daughter dance coming up February 14th. Super excited about over the Indiana campus. So definitely get your tickets. You don't have to be a father to be in the space. I mean, you could be an uncle, you could be a family friend, or whatever the case may be. If you've inspired somebody, just definitely you can sponsor somebody if that's the case, right? So just want to make certain that we take care of that, and that's going to be an exciting event. You're going to have we got DJ that's going to be on the 1s and 2s. We got people who are going to be taking pictures of you to commemorate the event. It's going to be awesome. So definitely the father-daughter dance February 14th. But then we also have what's coming up this Wednesday and then Tuesday in the Hardin County campus, Vision Night.
Oh,
So
2020.
Pastor's going to be giving us his vision for the 2020 vision. I'm getting tongue-tied, right? But he's going to be giving us our vision and for the church and the mission of the church, and getting us in a strategic alignment as to how we are to go out into the world and to showcase the love of Christ, and how we're going to do this in a strategic way, not just in the evangelism space, but how we're going to do it in our marketing, how we're going to do it with our youth. So just all over the case. So then the last of the top three is, definitely want to make certain that we send out our heartfelt condolences to the family of the Bryants, but then also everybody else who was in that helicopter. But then we also don't want to make it, seem as though it's just that family that has experienced loss. I mean, all through the month of January, there have been different folks who have passed off the scene, even here in our own church. And so we want to make certain that we send out that love to each and everybody. Just let you know, look, you're not alone. This grieving process is a process, and don't feel like it has to be done overnight. Don't feel like you got to get over it like this. It's a process, and I think that this lesson that we're dealing with today is extremely on point, because it's speaking with some of the conversations that we need to have before this happens. And speaking culturally, we probably don't do a great job of having these conversations. So definitely prayers go out to all of you who are dealing with loss at this present time, but just want to let you know that weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. So this lesson, set your house in order. I mean, this is pretty major.
Major.
When we talk about setting your house in order, and we're talking about death, everybody is going to have that appointment.
Yeah.
You can't escape that. We all got to go through that, and there are difficult conversations that you just have to have. It's beneficial if you have them, because if you don't, if you ever want to see folks act out, wait until a funeral, when someone passes.
Right.
And if there are any unresolved issues, seemingly that's usually the time when those kinds of things
Come out.
just really come out. And people, it's not that they mean to be out of order, but sometimes their emotions just get the best of them. And then especially on top of that, if you haven't had these kinds of discussions that we're going to talk about as far as estate plan and putting together a will and things like that, if you've not done that, yeah, it gets really kind of sticky. It's definitely. So let's jump into it. Our aim speaks of, it says Psalms 100 verse 3. It tells us that we should know the Lord and know that he is good, for it is he that has made us and we are his. Therefore, we are to be stewards, and we are obligated to manage God's property in a proper manner. This means our lives. Therefore, we need to set our house in order. And again, not necessarily just making this a big deal from the perspective it was Kobe Bryant and his daughter, but the way that it happened, sometimes we can leave and we can take for granted that we're going to come back home.
Absolutely.
It's not promised, right? I mean, the next day, it could have easily been that, we lay down, go to sleep,
And don't wake up.
and we don't wake up. So that's why this is so important for us to make certain we have these conversations and we talk about this as best we can. So there's a scripture reference that we have and we'll touch on. It's in Isaiah chapter 38, verses 1 through 5. And this is speaking to a moment when Hezekiah was at the end of his life, and how God blessed him with an additional 15 years. And so we're going to check it out. But then how we're going to do this is we're going to look at that, but then we're going to also have the conversation to say, what happens if by chance we had this conversation before it got to the end time? And how would that be a little bit different if we were prepared for this, considering we know that it's coming, right? So did you want to do the honors of reading Isaiah?
Yeah,
Okay,
sure.
cool.
So we have Isaiah 38, verse 1 through 5. And it says, "In those days Hezekiah became sick and was at a point of death. And Isaiah the prophet, the son of Amos, came to him and said to him, Thus says the Lord, set your house in order, for you shall die. For you shall no, I can't read.
Now I'm the one to talk about it.
For you shall die, you shall not recover. Then Hezekiah turned his face to the wall and prayed to the Lord, and said, Please, O Lord, remember how I have walked before you in faithfulness and with a whole heart, and how you have done what is good in your sight. And Hezekiah wept bitterly. Then the word of the Lord came to Isaiah. Go and say to Hezekiah, Thus says the Lord, the God of David your father. I have heard your prayer. I have seen your tears. Behold, I will add 15 years to your life.
So I'm not saying that that doesn't happen current day, right? I mean, I'm sure that there are people who have been in a hospital and have died on the hospital bed and been resuscitated back to life, go
It
on to
happens,
live.
yeah.
Yeah, that happens. I know. But what if in verse 1, when Amos says to him, set your house in order, what if Hezekiah could say, you know what? About that, my house is already in order.
Yeah,
I'm good.
we're
So,
good, we're
what,
straight.
I mean, but that's a conversation, right? I think it's very important for us to really consider that from the perspective we all are going to face the end of our time here on earth. I mean, we're going to stop living here, but start living somewhere else. It's the end of this life and the beginning of another. Death is nothing more but a vehicle to take us from this life to the next. So we know that this day is coming. So let's get prepared for that day and don't wait until we get really, really sick and hope that we have the opportunity to have that conversation
Exactly.
at that time. So one of the things that which the lesson talks about is estate planning. And estate planning for Christians is talking about the life that you leave the life that you live will be the life that you leave. Meaning that you should set up something so that when the time comes, people know how you want things to go. I've known people who have set up their church service. They had the people on the roll exactly who they
Sounds
wanted
like a
to.
mom.
Right.
Sounds like she plans her funeral all the time.
That she's already got it
It's
planned
pretty
out.
morbid, but that's her
But
thing.
that's a great conversation to have, though. I mean, because why would I, if I have my final wishes, I know what they are. Why would I wait for someone else who's dealing with grieving, right? They're dealing with the loss of somebody who once was here, they're no longer here, and I'm going to put that off on them because I didn't, take the time to do those things. If that person is dealing with the grieving process, then they also have to have the wherewithal to sit there and think through
what you would want. In your
what you,
service,
I mean,
yeah.
that's kind of unfair. So again, so that's one of the things that we definitely want to talk about as far as having that conversation about life, about death, about the reality of what your final wishes are, about those do not resuscitate conversations, about the pre-directives and the advanced directives to ensure that people understand exactly what you want, because maybe you want your service, your memorial service to be on a beach somewhere. Maybe you want a lake or something that there's something that you want. If you wait until that end, you may not necessarily have all that put together, for that. So it talks about, so we have 8 different things, talk about the elements, the basic elements of an estate plan. And so we'll walk through them. Now, here's where we are going to put out this disclaimer, right? This is not legal advice. This is not an attorney or a tax or an accountant or someone telling you how to handle your
I'm
financial
in high school. I can't
You know what I'm saying?
any legal
So it's not like we have the certifications or the degrees or what have you. What we are saying is that this needs to be a continued conversation so that you go and you get the appropriate counsel to do the right things. How to handle a will, how to handle if you have property and you want to make certain that it's divested in the appropriate manner, how to go about having your estate executed. I mean, those things, please go see someone. Don't say, well, they did a Sunday school lesson and we got it. Right? No, that
An
is not it.
18-year-old told me how to make
How
a
to
will.
plan my estate and my will. That's not what we're saying. What we are saying is let's have the conversation. So we're going to start off. The first thing is a will. And
Oof.
right, I mean, it seems morbid, but sometimes we think that because if you don't have a lot, then there isn't a need for a will.
Yeah.
And that is so not true, because we would be surprised at how many people get into fights, fist fights. I'm talking about knockdown dragouts over records, over tapes and over pictures and over certain artifacts that, we would consider not even really.
Valuable.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, it's nothing but some paper. It's nothing but a 45-inch vinyl. There's nothing about that. But having a will set up in place stops those kinds of arguments and fights, because even if I will it to you, you then have the ability to say, you know what, I'll share this with you. And those kinds of conversations could be taken care of. Now, I'm not saying that everything is going to be dealt with with the will, because you still got people crazy. But
Really crazy.
look, crazy, what you say? But the fact is, if we have something already set in place, if we have that will, and so one of the things in the will, it says anyone old enough to own property is old enough to have a will.
Okay, so I shouldn't be writing my will because I was kind of scared for a second.
Well, you are old enough to own property.
But I don't, so I'm not going to worry about it. But I will once I buy something.
Once you buy something, I'm
Yes.
serious. I mean,
Yeah.
we think that's the thing, right? We think because we don't have a lot that, I don't really have nothing. But I'm not saying that you should start writing a will. I'm not suggesting that. But what I am saying is, even if you have just a little bit, this story reminds me of Matthew 25. Matthew 25, 14 through 30. This is the space where you have the 5 talents given to one person. You have 2 talents given to another. 1 talent is given to this last person. And because he only had a little bit, he said, you know what? I'm just going to bury this in the ground. I'm not going to do nothing with it. That's just forget, it's only a little bit. Well, you don't have the luxury of knowing when your last day is going to be.
Yeah.
And so just because we say we only got a little bit, God is entrusting us with what he's given us. And I really believe in that story, what it's really saying is God is not going to give you more than you can handle because he loves us. He knows that we can't handle certain things. So I'm not going to give a baby a steak because I know this child can't handle a steak. And I'm not going to give somebody an abundance of wealth if I know that they can't handle it. Sometimes it happens and we see that, but there are lessons around, there's a broader context around that, the why that's happening. But what I'm saying is, right, rambling, really just trying to press the point, you don't have to have a lot to have a will. What we do have to have is that conversation, because that conversation is extremely important, because there's somebody who values what little bit you have, and if you're not here, then that little bit is all that they have of you. And if we have that advanced conversation, then we can take care of some stuff. Now, imagine this, right? Because it speaks about this in the lesson. It says a will is particularly important if you have children. So even if you have an insurance plan, and
I'm learning so much.
all right, so even if you have an insurance plan and that insurance plan takes care of your funeral expenses, that still doesn't take care of where things go. So if you have a car, then what happens to the car? If you have, not necessarily if you have a house, but maybe you just got stuff in the house. Maybe you got an apartment, or you're in, you have, what's that, where you're living with folks, assisted living.
Oh, okay.
And you're living in assisted living, and so you got all this stuff. So who gets all this stuff and takes care of all this stuff? I mean, it's just because if you have kids and not just one child, then I promise you there is going to be an issue where some folks are going to say, well, I want this, well, I want that. And it's just, you don't have to have that argument if you don't need to. So a will is extremely important. The second thing is a letter of last instruction. So, and again, I know that this conversation is kind of morbid, but it's important, right? Because when we think about the reality that tomorrow's not promised, when we think about the reality that you could get in your car, or you could go outside and just start walking. There was a child here in the California area that was sitting at his table eating, and was some folks got upset and start arguing over a dice game. Shot a random stray bullet, goes through the house, shoots him while he's playing on his iPad, eating some snacks. I mean, and that just goes all through me because senseless. You get upset about that type of stuff because it doesn't make sense, but then it also hits the point. You never know when your last day might be. So the letter of last instruction speaks about who to notify if in the event something happens. So if one were to die, who are the groups of people that should be notified? And so that's nothing more but a list of people, their names, addresses, phone numbers, any contact information that you have, email address. And now we're in this social media age. Maybe, you have a special group that you have just to communicate to, because especially if by chance there's some kind of tragedy that goes on around the world. If you can communicate to the little group real quick and say, hey, I'm okay. I mean, that right there is enough to just let some folks, you just check in a little bit and just let some folks know. So again, there's that. Then there's the location of these important papers. And oh God, right? So imagine having an insurance policy, but nobody can find the insurance policy because nobody knows where you put it. So having a location and letting people know where this stuff is. Funeral arrangements in details, making certain that all these arrangements are already planned out. The more you can have planned out, the easier it is for the people that are left behind to plan and do these certain things, because when they're in the state of grieving, I don't have the wherewithal and the mind to be able to deal with all of this. And folks start asking me questions. Now I'm getting upset because I don't want to have to answer these questions. I don't want to have to deal with this. In fact, I don't really want to have to deal with the idea of losing you. But you're not here. I can't pick up the phone anymore and call you. I can't, even if you're in a totally different state, totally different country, the idea that you once were here, I knew you were present. You're not anymore. Those kinds of things that if the more that's planned out, the easier that it will be, because again, these conversations are extremely needed. I could imagine in the situation where someone loses their life in a traumatic fashion, if these conversations aren't had, then the planning of this is extremely difficult. I know someone that's very close to me who has lost a lot of people at one time, and it happened in an instant. Their mental state at that time,
It's not.
because all these people, just yesterday, we was on the phone talking, laughing, and having a good time. They're in a totally different country, and then all of a sudden, I get a phone call. They're all wiped out. Somebody with, that's not even a joke. Because I remember yesterday, like I heard the guy say it. I heard him say his name, and I'm sitting there like,
Nah.
yeah, you got to be playing. There must be another Kobe Bryant.
Yeah.
It can't be. But I'm sitting there, and I remember when I heard about Michael Jackson. I was at the YMCA watching Kobe come down the slide on the water slide, and here I am listening to the radio, and had to report Michael Jackson died. Or when Prince. It's just moments, and I'm just naming people that are bigger names that most folks know, but I know that there are some people who, you've had people that have been lost to gun violence or any senseless act, and they probably wasn't even in the act or in the situation. They just happen to be around it and in a moment, right? So again, what we're getting back to is just saying that these conversations are extremely important, and I know that they're not fun. They're difficult conversations. But if the more we have these conversations, the more we can prepare ourselves for the reality. We're not supposed to be here forever. We all got an appointment. Okay, so we're on number 3. We got like 6 more, right? So bear with us. So the legacy. I know this is morbid. I know it's a tough conversation, man. This is rough on me.
Kind of lighten the mood, but
yeah, you need a joke. You heard about the one about the sidewalk? I'm just kidding. So the next one is called a legal will. And a legacy will, is a non-legal document that allows you to record key pieces of your personal story, confirming God's grace in your life for the next generation. Perhaps make this your faith story. So legacy will, that's basically, if in the event you want to just capture your own biography and have it read so that folks will have something to remember you by, more than just the small caption that you may get in a funeral program. So there is that. So this gives the opportunity, especially for the Christian believer, understanding that your life here on this earth is bigger than you. God has personal promise and a unique blessing just for your life. And so your life is meant to touch as many people as possible. This legacy will could be a way for you to do that, because somebody who may not have known you as well, when you tell your story and you tell all the things you've been through and how God has delivered you, kept you, all of that, that could be something that could be a blessing. And not a lot of people even know about a legacy will. So again, not attorneys. Listen, we're not Legal Shield, not Legal Zoom. What we are saying is let's have these conversations. Naming a durable power of attorney with health care directives. Now, this is extremely important because this speaks to the reality of when you find yourself in a situation where you're not able to make decisions for yourself, then there are people that you can assign that you trust to make those decisions for you, opposed to having somebody just because they're the biggest voice in the room, now they get to make those decisions for you because, well, I've always been around, I've always done this, and so and they may not be making the best decisions in your best interest. So it's always great if you can have that documented and already set up so that this person knows, hey, if something were to ever to happen to me, I know you will look out for me and I know you'll take care. So just, I want you to be the power of attorney of me. So, and this person, again, they make financial, legal decisions. So like I have an aunt who, she has Alzheimer's. So she can't make any decisions. But if in the event there was somebody who was just one of those people who just wanted to try to get over on folks, they probably could walk up to and say, hey, listen, I want you to sign this check because this, and whatever amount, and just sign it. They can take it to the bank if by chance there wasn't anything that was set aside to say, hey, this person is not at themselves. So if anybody comes in with anything, that I need to bless it to make certain that it's right. But there are people out there that would do that. If you're not careful, they would take advantage of older people, especially because there's some people who get lonely and they just want company. And so they'll do anything for anybody. But if you have things set up, you can protect your loved ones from people like that. So that's a power of attorney. The next item is a living will. And this, again, it talks about your intentions, what you want to happen once you pass off the scene. So if you do have a house, if you do have a car, if you do have a little bit of money, if you got an insurance policy, life insurance, or if you have stocks, bonds, if you have documents or anything that you want to make certain people get, take the time to list those things out. And again, you don't have to have a lot. It's not like you have to have, Jeff Bezos' money or Oprah. I mean, if you just sit down and think about it, put those things in order and just make certain that you do what you need to do so that you can lay that out. Because again, everything that's not resolved becomes an issue around the funeral time. If in the event we do the repast, we go to the church, we sit down, let somebody start talking about, well, you know what I was thinking? I was going to take those, that TV, that 60-inch TV that they get. No, you not. I mean, it's crazy. But if you ever want to see some people fight over silly stuff, go to a funeral and just watch them and just watch people, especially if there's something for them to fight over. It's sad. Have these things taken care of in advance. So, and because we are in the electronic age, you don't have to have a document as far as just in paper. You can have it electronically. And so again, we are not LegalZoom. We are not legal aid. We are not attorneys, tax accountants. We are just some people who care about you, our viewing audience, and we want to make certain you get these conversations taken care of. So seek the appropriate counsel. Find you an attorney, talk to somebody who is an accountant, somebody who can help you understand what you need to do when you get to the point of needing to do Medicaid and having to go to these long-term care facilities. Maybe it's a situation where you can't have a certain amount in your bank account. Well, if you have the conversation early, then you won't have to worry about what am I going to do with anything that's over $2,000 that's in my bank account now. I can't just hurry up and transfer it because they go back 7 years looking at your account. So again, have these conversations as early as you can. And we're not trying to scare anybody. We just want to make certain that we try our best to prepare people for this conversation because it's coming. I mean, all of us, we're going to face our demise. We're not going to stay here forever. Prayerfully, you're saved, and you and I, we're going to connect up there with Christ, and we're going to have a hallelujah time.
Yes.
I'm talking about, man, I'm ready. I'm not, all right, let me just, all right, so electronic will, you can do it electronically. 7 is going away expenses and funeral planning. I think one of the saddest things is when you have people who have passed on, but yet they don't have any money to bury their loved ones. And then you'll see people doing GoFundMes or things like that. And I've even seen where some people were upset at other people because they didn't receive the support from their friends or what have you so that they could help bury their loved ones. And again, having this conversation early, if we have the conversation early, we take care of this stuff early, we don't have to worry about getting to that point, because if you want to talk about depression, that right there will send you into a deep depression. Not only is the fact that this person's gone, Now
I can't afford it.
I can't even help bury them or do right by them, and because it's so again, make certain that you do this early. So some of the things that you could do is pre-need shopping. And so basically what that's talking about is going through the process of shopping and finding out what all is needed so that all this could take, so your monument, your coffin, the expenses of the wherever you're going to go, whatever you want your services to be at, all making certain that you do everything, whatever is needed for this, you do it in advance. You mentioned earlier how you said, probably my mom has already got this already planned out. Seriously, it's important because if we wait, so pre-need payment. So this one, again, I would talk to somebody about this because we are not
like
the
in bold letters.
But right, seriously, our disclaimer. This is not advice for you to manage your life. No, what we are saying is that you have the conversation. So prepayment is suggesting that you begin paying on this in advance so that when it comes time where everything needs to happen, this is already taken care of. That could be a problem if in the event this organization goes out of business, or if in the event you move to a totally different city, different country, and now you want your funeral arrangement to be done in a different space. So probably want to work it out. Maybe not necessarily pay for it, but maybe put the money up. Maybe have it already set aside. However you decide to do that, but nonetheless, have that conversation. Avoid emotional overspending. This is what happens, right?
Yeah.
If you have the conversation early, then when something happens, you don't have to worry about someone saying, no, they need to have the 24 karat gold, chrome, diamond encrusted casket, and need the pillars on the inside with lamb skin. And I mean, seriously, it's because at that point you're thinking about doing the best for this person and you just love them, and so you want to do everything, want to glam it up, whatever the case may be. Some people will go there, and when you realize that this is going into the ground and it's really not about that, what it really is about is ensuring that this person is laid in a respectful way and that you give as much love and support to everybody around, and y'all love each other, because that's the only way you make it. You don't make it on an island by yourself. At this point, we need all these discussions to be had so that we can spend all of our time loving each other, because that's what gets us through this. It's when I see you and you need a hug and you ain't saying nothing to nobody, but I know you need a hug. I can't do that if I'm thinking to myself, I really want that TV. Yeah, it's just, so again, let's have those conversations ahead of time. So then it says ask for an itemized price list. And so this is talking about just cost-conscious decisions that could include same-day visitation, having a person dressed in their favorite clothes, cremation versus a burial, explore the secondary market. So, you have those casket stores as opposed to shopping totally at the cemetery and at the mortuary to get the casket and everything done all in the same place, one-stop shop. They're just different options. And so it's basically saying explore all those options and don't just wait. And when you get into an emotional state where you lost this person, you can find yourself in a situation where you'll just say, all right, well, whatever, just anything is fine. And you can avoid that just by having a conversation early. The last one is the hospice conversation. And that's, again, having the conversation early, because when you have the advance directives, when you have all those conversations about what am I going to do if in the event I get in a situation where I have a terminal illness and there is no way that I can be healed. Doctor gave me 6 months to live, and I'm going fast. What do I do? A friend of mine just passed. I love that man dearly. He used to pay for my tuition, and I didn't know it. So he kept it under wraps. And so it was crazy because I would go to church and I would be there and I would talk about it, and I'd go to school and I'm looking for my tuition bill, and it would never come. And so one day I was transitioning from Simmons going to Campbellsville, because at the time they had the that connection and you could transfer your credits. And they probably said, I don't know. But I was in there to get my transcript, and the lady opened the folder and I saw all of these checks from Deacon Bell. And that's my main man, dude. So definitely rest in heaven with Mrs. Jones, man. I know y'all definitely connecting again. But I went to visit him in hospice right before he passed. And so the first time I went, talking good, he was man, it was almost like he didn't belong in there. Few days later, he's just sitting there just breathing, and there is no conversation. He's breathing, and they were calling everybody in saying, hey, look, you might want to come by and have the final conversation. He can hear you, but he's on his way out. And I remember that because after I left, I got the Facebook message where he had transitioned.
Mm-hmm.
And his family's tight, right? They got all these conversations taken care of. They got the will and everything. But the thing that I remember most was him always telling me, he said, Corey, hey, man, you got a call in your life. And so, listen, I know when I kick on out of here, I'm all right, because I know you're going to do. It's those kinds of things. And the only way that I could just see myself getting through that, if I was his family and he didn't have all that stuff taken care of, man, as many people's lives that he touched, God, I'd be in a wreck if I had to try to figure all this stuff out. But thanks be to God, he and his family, they had all of this done. But that hospice conversation, like I said, is huge, because when they get there isn't you know what? God's going to see you out of this thing.
Yeah.
God's going to get you out. Yeah, God, it's possible that God could restore your health. But guess what? You're going to go back, right? Everybody has to check out of here. So, again, this conversation about death, about understanding how to manage your finances, how to manage your life, how to manage things, and just make certain that you're good stewards over what God has entrusted you with, is extremely important, because God has entrusted you to be a good steward over all that he has given you, which also includes our life. Mm-hmm. And let's not wait till the night before to do our homework. Let's,
Good advice.
Yeah, good advice. let's make certain that we're doing what we need to do before we get to that space, because it is at that point that I don't need to be making decisions trying to figure out, well, I think that they would want this. I think that they would want this. I'm not going to be able to think straight, because I'm missing you so much. At this point, what I need to be able to love as many and hug as many people as I can, because all I'm going to be thinking about are your laughs. I'm going to be thinking about how you would smile when you walk in the room. I'm going to be thinking about the fact that you're not here anymore. And that's going to take all that I've got just to make it through that. And that would be extremely irresponsible for us if we don't take care of our business ahead of time. So, listen, let's keep this conversation going. I mean, not necessarily just about death and losing folks, right? But more so about the reality, man, whatever we can do to help you to get connected with the resources, to have these conversations so that you and your family can be prepared for this. That's what we want to do. Look, Ryan and I, we love each and every one of you, and super excited to be back in on Millennial Mondays. I mean, I think that's it, man. Just making certain that we take advantage of every day. Don't take any day for granted, because it is at that moment you take it for granted. You don't know when your last day is going to be. We love y'all. See y'all next week. Millennial Monday. We off in this space.
Gravity's not on our side.
It's not on our side at all.